Good evening, goats and ghouls. We are back. It is Wednesday and another meeting of the Witches Movie Coven. I am Courtney Buckley, ghost bait on Scared and Alone, sitting in, filling some big shoes for our regular host, Patty Negri. She's home with her husband who just had surgery. So if we can all just take a second and wish them both well, that would be great. But I am joined tonight, of course, by my lovely coven, and we have some special guests. So if we want to go around and maybe introduce ourselves, starting with Heather.
Hi, I'm Heather Greene. I am a journalist and a editor at Llewellyn Worldwide. I also am the author of Lights, Camera, Witchcraft, a definitive guide to witches in American film and television. Oh, there's another one, a twin. Thank you, Courtney. And that's what I do, a film historian, and I have multiple degrees in the area, so I'm impossible when we talk about film sometimes.
Amazing. And Richard-Lael.
Yes, that would be me. Oh, that's me. I have to do you now since you're doing it. That's me.
That's me.
So, I am Richard-Lael. Richard-Lael is one name, not two. If I were just Richard, I'd be a... That's right. And some people like that, and I never judge. You like what you like. So I am the gentleman psychic. I'm a psychic and a medium. I used to be a psychic and a small, but I gained some weight. And unlike other mediums here in New Orleans who are all doom and gloom or love and light, I am a happy medium. In fact, I am here in New Orleans where you can find me. I read tarot both in my private home and at Apothecary and Potions down in the Quarter. Also, I am an event planner and a decorator, I guess. All of this stuff is what I do.
Thank you, Richard-Lael. And as our coven may have noticed, also we're missing Jason, who, in case you were wondering, my hex took effect and he is somewhere else other than here tonight. So filling in for him, we have Mathew.
Hello. So I am a Salem witch, and I am a psychic medium in the local area. Many good friends here on the screen, and I thank all of you guys and our lovely producers for having me this week. I am also an occult poet, so I do a lot of sort of trauma work and stuff like that, deep work with the paranormal and in the spiritual. And I also like to comment on film scores and everything on that front because my background is in music, so to kind of complement a little bit of the film. Heather, I always bumped up against all of the theater and film people in school, so it's always nice to share the sphere again. So yeah,
I agree.
A little bit about me.
Awesome. And last but certainly not least, a face that you've seen around with me in traumatic situations. Speaking of trauma, the one, the only Gigi from Paranormal XL.
Hi, I'm the host of Paranormal XL podcast, also host of Killer Kitchen Chronicles. And I am really looking forward to tonight's show. And I just got really, really nervous. So
you'll be fine. It'll be great. All right. So tonight's show, we're talking about a Jack Black film. What's not to love about that? We'll find out. The House with a Clock in Its Walls. And for those in our chat who may not have seen it, and also, I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. Welcome to everyone there in the chat. We see your comments. We'll be reading them. Keep them coming.
I don't actually see any comments, but that's okay.
Yeah,
I have them. Mine went out for a second. I have them back, so I'll read them. Richard-Lael, do you have an unbiased synopsis for us tonight?
I certainly do.
Yes.
So here is the story. For whatever reason, when I downloaded this film, they had to check my age. I don't know why. And then I realized that it was because the one that I looked up didn't have an L in it.
I knew where that was going.
That was a completely different kind of film.
I bet.
But now I'll talk about the actual film.
That was This Black film.
So in the film that we are actually talking about, A House with a Clock in Its Walls, this film is about a young boy who loses his parents, and then he gets on a bus where he meets his uncle, and his uncle says, "Harry Potter, welcome to Hogwarts." Not really, but it might as well have been Harry Potter. Anyway, this kid gets out of the bus and he realizes that this big old house is not only haunted, it is in fact actually they're all witches. It's inhabited by witches. His uncle is a boy witch who's a wizard. His uncle's friend is a witch, not a wizard, and they had a roommate at one point who was evil, and then I fell asleep, and then I woke up to a poop joke with a tree cat thing, and I watched the rest of it.
Bad
And then there was
kitty.
something about a doomsday device that you had to kind of pull out of, you had to kind of figure out what it was. And yeah, it was a doomsday device. And apparently the evil wizard wanted to kill everybody excepting for his girlfriend, and I can't blame him, with the exception of our lovely, illustrious coven. And then there was the end. He's a witch. You're a wizard, Harry. And then there was... Oh, and the kid screams like a little girl the entire time. Ah, Uncle Jonathan! Also, I mean, I had a fever, and I wasn't feeling well. So I don't know if the nausea was from watching the film or if it was just from the flu. I don't know. But Uncle Jonathan poop joke. That's the synopsis.
Wow. That was entirely unbiased. I'm impressed.
Yeah.
That might have been the most unbiased you've ever been. So that was great. A lot. Thank you so much for sharing
I
that
fell
with us.
asleep and I missed a whole good 40 minutes of it, and I still know the plot.
Most of the film.
But you nailed it. You nailed it. Heather, is this movie in your book?
It is not. The witchcraft movies that fall between 2018 and 2020. That was when I was kind of finishing, and so I didn't catch every single one. It should be. It definitely qualifies. The original manuscript I wrote, honestly, was done by 2018. So everything after 2018 was not in it. And then when I revised it, I added some stuff in. So this one should have been, and it's on the list I've added when I revise the book again and update it in 10, 15, 30 years, whenever it comes. But it is a witch film. Although it is the type of witch film that you're going to see not when witchcraft films are popular. This is the fantasy witchcraft film that's much more akin to what it feels like a 1980s film. It captures the it captures something, the story, the innocence that a lot of the 80s fantasy magical films capture. It's very simple. It's almost like Harry Potter, as Richard-Lael pointed out, meets Halloween Town meets Goosebumps, yes, very much so. It kind of has that kind of, it sits in that kind of space where the witchcraft isn't witchcraft in the way our myths and our stories tell us, which is way more sinister, or even this is not, again, most witchcraft films tell the story of a girl coming of age, or they're line it to girl power, women's power. This is not that film. This is the Sorcerer's Apprentice. This is Harry Potter. So it's usually films that contain the warlock, as they call themselves, the male witch, with little boys, are much more magical magician-like. They're much more fantasy. There's a little bit of what do you even call steampunk element to it. So that's what we're looking at here. This is the films you see in between. So this film came out in 2018. It's actually a adaptation of a book from 1973 that was very popular, a kid's book. I didn't read it, and I didn't even see the movie in 2018. I didn't know this existed, which is interesting because it was very popular. It actually made a lot of money. I think I wrote down the numbers somewhere on my paper and I can't see them because I probably can't. Oh, there it is. So it cost $42 million. Amazing. A movie costs $42 million. We just have to step back and breathe for a second when we think about the cost of movies these days. But it made $131 million worldwide. So it was universally acceptable. But they say that this film should have been more successful. It came out at a time where there was a lot of other films coming out, which apparently lessened people's interest in it, and then it kind of disappeared, which explains why it wasn't on my radar in 2018. But that's kind of the basis of it. They're really Jack Black. It's got a big cast. It has high production value. It's got a lot going on, and I think that's all I have to say about it at this point. I think we need to talk about whether we like it or not. I think, and I think we might already know Richard-Lael's, but that was unbiased, so I'm not sure.
You actually don't even know. You don't know yet.
No,
Yeah.
I don't.
Richard-Lael does love to surprise us at the end. So
Inquiring minds want to know.
yeah.
I was
I
about
was
to say
saying-
he's acting
I love
Serena
the set.
right now.
I love the set. The
All
set
right,
was
there's a
beautiful.
little nugget for us.
The only thing I'm going to tell you I didn't like about the set was the chair from Frasier that was like a dog. Like that was the ugliest chair I have ever seen in my life.
Well, Richard-Lael, that chair and some of the other elements as they walk through the house brought Beauty and the Beast. And I was waiting for them to start singing Be It My Guest. Like halfway through the movie. I'm like, oh my goodness, where's Cogsworth here? Come on, start singing.
In the
I was waiting
walls.
to-
He was in the walls.
Dude,
I was-
and I am so impressed that you knew who I was talking about there. So,
Personally,
Well,
I was
you
waiting
know
for the
what?
dancing brooms.
As much as I talk badly about Disney, I have seen 1 or 3 or 10 or 30 Disney.
okay.
We'll eventually get you to watch them all, or at least the good ones. Gigi, you have an interesting connection with this movie. Did you want to share that with us?
Oh, I live about an hour from Marshall, Michigan. The house is absolutely stunning. So the author, or the original author of the book, he actually most of his books came or were made the thought of Marshall in his mind. He loved the historic houses and whatnot that were in that town. It's just that it's just a beautiful town that they've kept the history alive there. So if you do ever get a chance, see the house. It's actually called the Crownin House in Marshall. You can take tours and such like that. It's look it up. That's what all I can say.
We're gonna have to squeeze that in.
So it
on
is
our-
very, very close. I have seen it.
That's so exciting.
Our trips.
Cronin
Yeah,
House.
we're-
See, how do you spell it?
Cronin.
Cronin.
The Cronin
Yeah,
House.
Yes.
we're gonna have to squeeze that in on our
Let's
trip to
see.
Michigan.
Oh,
Territory.
yes.
Is it? Can you take tours of it? Is it?
Oh, it's
is it a place you
beautiful.
can
Okay.
tour?
Yes. Yes. Yep.
I don't know if you can see
It
that.
is.
Can you see
They
that?
actually in Marshall around Halloween time, they
Mm.
put this thing together where you can travel or not travel, but take tours of certain homes and stuff for the historical society and such. Like there's so much history in that town. I say that about a lot of towns in Michigan, but that one by far has so many. My family actually goes there once a year for a bluegrass festival. And that's what I spend my time doing, wandering around like a crazy person, looking at these beautiful houses and the architecture.
I love that. All right, so
So, yeah.
I'm prepared with 2 pages of quotes for later. So I'm just gonna put this out there right now. If anyone steals any of my quotes that I worked so hard on, I will be calling the hexing materials to my
I
area.
have a list.
I
was about
I'm
to say.
just hoping that your quotes, Courtney, do not include Uncle Jonathan.
My quotes don't, but my notes do.
That was all of them.
Mhm.
I was about to say
Yeah.
I have a favorite scene that I wrote down. It may include like a good chunk of the quotes on your list, Courtney. So that's why I stayed back and I was like, all right, I'm gonna stick with the favorite scene, and one of them may involve a poop joke. So
All right. Well, just
So
watch
what's
the
that?
quotes because I'll light it on fire.
Yeah,
I know
just
you
tell
will.
us the scene and avoid the quotes.
yeah, absolutely. Leaving me commenting on pop culture materials such as music all through college. I am very intimately familiar with the skill to do that, and also intimately familiar with avoiding being tossed in the harbor by Courtney.
At least you know what's hiding in my arsenal. So,
do.
Real quick, I have a couple of notes that don't include quotes yet that I'd love to share. Watching this movie, I saw this movie in 2018 when it came out in the movie theater. It was awesome. I loved it. I bought it on DVD at that point when it came out. Like I've enjoyed this movie since its creation. But watching it now, I haven't seen it in a few years, and watching it now was a whole different experience because that mansion, the way that it's set up in the movie, feels like every location I've been to on Scared and Alone. And I have quotes to back that up. So it was just a lot. The magic I loved. It was so fun. And my insult repertoire has been built up immensely because of the quotes in this movie. So I'm very excited about that. One of the scenes that made me almost lose my mind was when they came out of the like devil house and the devil mouth in the basement and all the dolls were lined up. And I was like, oh my God, this is my worst nightmare. Like, oh no.
I almost texted you when I hit that scene.
Yeah, I almost did this. There's a quote. I think I did text you one of the quotes because it made me feel like, oh, we were in this movie. It was so weird. But I think also the baby Uncle Jonathan with the big head at the end. Like I literally thought I'm gonna have nightmares for the rest of my life. And then when he peed, lost my mind. Okay, screaming out loud. And then I had a thought. I put it all together. I wrapped it all up. Like this whole movie happened. This whole event. This whole like whatever happened because Isaac, the dead guy, had PTSD and refused to see a therapist. Like, and we made a movie about it. Like, cool, but because we want to take over the world and rewind it. So those are my notes. I'll save my quotes for later. But Matthew, what did you think of this?
So it's very interesting. I had several notes on this, and I just kept kind of going with it because it kind of like I think Heather, you posted about something like referring to this like paging the hive mind of Facebook to find older films or find older things, that you cannot remember that are on the tip of your tongue. This film did that for me, essentially. So first of all, I'm going to let everybody know I just had Indian food. So someone tonight on the show may be raising the dead no matter what. So that's the preface there, but it's very interesting. So I heavily related with the movie on the fact of like Jack Black's character being like an occultist making real magic in a home that was populated by, again, what Courtney was mentioning, trauma and old memories for not only him, but for Isaac beforehand, and then Lewis losing his parents, and especially it sort of being set in that Midwestern vibe granted in a time period that was a little bit before. It gave me a very Telltale Heart type of vibe, with like Edgar Allan Poe, Telltale Heart, of the past lover eating up the narrative or the narrator, and it like sort of reminded me of similar traumas faced within like the Bible Belt area and family, and working with real magic to like open up a safe space, but also having the echoes of the memories beating on the wall, So it was I definitely saw a lot of the more nuanced bases of this. And also within this, I was actually kind of surprised because, and I know with the modern movies, it's a little bit, hit or miss, but easier. I wouldn't have been surprised if they didn't have an occult advisor. I don't know if you would know anything about that, Heather, on this front, because I saw a lot of like going through the texts and everything. I was like, ooh, the Kabbalion, ooh, like actual charts, and things.
Well, it felt like to me, and I didn't see an advisor because there really wasn't real magic in it, being this is a fantasy, and that's a really good point to bring up. And I was going to bring it up later. Is that this film had so much in it. I mean, you're talking about the house being, it was a tapestry, landscape. It was a tapestry in that it had everything everywhere, but and as simple as the story was, they had to find this clock in the wall because it was put there the story was pretty simple as far as a narrative, but what they did was, it was like the occult threw up on the narrative.
Embellishment, essentially.
I would say it vomited forcefully, because you had every single possible, not only cue to witchcraft in it. You had everything. You had everything from Halloween pumpkins to spooky stuff, dolls, anything that was in a witchcraft or occult related film, whether it was horror or not, was in this film. They even had the one thing they came in, and this is going to be a bastard quote because I'm not saying it right. He runs in looking because they need protection from something, and he goes, "I gotta have a Malleus Maleficarum somewhere." And I'm going to tell you right now, the Malleus Maleficarum is not going to help in that situation. So I'm sorry if that was one of your quotes, Courtney, but this was the point, is that they, like you said, the Kabbalion, they mention every single possible occult thing. It's like someone said, stuff it in as far as got more, got to put it in, got more from everywhere. Everything.
Kind of like the trauma, that was based on sort of like where all of that sort of progression of their magic came from. Like I guess sort of in other words, could you say that where other films may have misinterpreted and kind of like went along with the moral panic, it kind of like way overcompensated in the other direction?
Well, what I think this was is I think this was supposed to be fun. And I think they just threw everything at it to make it like that tapestry. And so you have cues to Harry Potter with the moving pictures. You have the pumpkins. That's very much feels like a Halloween Town or a Halloween movie. So you have stuff that feels realistic at points, where it points to more of the modern witchcraft stuff. You just have all of it. You have the wands, you have the electricity. That's movies. So it's cueing movies as well as our fantasy as well as horror with the dolls. So the story is very simple. The plot is very simple. But they decorate that narrative. They hang every single thing possible on that narrative, and it matches the landscape of the house.
Yeah, one thing that I thought was very interesting was I personally didn't know where they got the idea of like you become a witch or a warlock by defeating an evil spirit with your own magic, and I'm like, some days waking up choosing violence, I may be that evil spirit, So I was kind of like, is that our new like universal path?
I just don't think we need to take this movie. This movie needs to be taken about as seriously in terms of witchcraft and anything as a lot of these. It's a fantasy witchcraft. I think it sits there. So I don't think they intentionally were trying to do anything good or bad to witchcraft. I think they just I think they threw a net out and caught all the things that were related to the cult in our lore and our fairy tales. There was fairy tales, and just kind of just stuck it all around. And again, it matched the house, which I think is the only reason it worked. Otherwise, it would have irritated me. But it matched the house.
I think, Mathew, on your point about defeating evil by your own magic, I intend to do that in November. Of course, I'm voting blue. That's how I'm doing my part to void the evil, as they say.
Oh my God. All right. Gigi, you didn't share your thoughts about the movie because I surprised you with a question.
Well, my favorite quote, I'm going to start with that, is it's my magic,
How dare
not
you?
yours.
All right.
That
Fine.
one,
I'll allow it because that was not
because
on my
that was
list.
probably the only thing that I took seriously, I guess, out of that movie. Because how many times do we have to actually say that to somebody? I know I do a lot. My thoughts on the movie, I enjoyed it. It was enjoyable. One of those kind of Sunday rainy day movies where you can do something else and that's kind of the background noise and you're not missing. Like if you look up every 10 minutes, you caught back up.
Or if you fall asleep
it is
for
very
40
cliche.
minutes like Richard-Lael.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. And he didn't miss a thing. It is cliche. I do think it's supposed to be that way. So it kind of reminded me of kind of like how the scary movies are set up, where they throw it all in one, and they're kind of not making fun of it, but making fun of it, the dry humor type thing. But I want to say, but there was also an innocence at the very beginning, like when Jonathan was shown the universe. something about that part. Like I put down my phone and everything, and it took me back to being like 5 years old for whatever reason. And then the giant lion bad kitty came out.
Copier.
Yes. And I was like, what the heck? Took the innocence right away. But I did have a few seconds of feeling like a child again. And that was amazing. That's like, I took that out of the movie, and it's my magic, not yours. Like, those were the two important things, I guess, that I took out of that. But it is cliche. I think it's one of those things, again, where it's, haha, that's kind of funny. That's funny. That's heck anyway. I do enjoy his movies. Again, it's one of those background noise type things where I can put it on, fall asleep for 40 minutes, wake up and be like, oh, that was an all right movie.
Yeah,
I
Gigi,
didn't
definitely
hate
get you
it.
on the.
I-
Yeah, I definitely get you on the uniqueness and on the how do I say, the endearing quality. Because I guess Heather, to your point of like, I now see what you're talking about, of throwing the spaghetti at the wall, occult in the occult terms, or the Cthulhu at the wall, if you will. Because I swear Isaac, in all sense of the terms, is a chaos magician, and not in how society thinks of chaos, but like, it reminded me of when I first started magic in general, because I think a lot of my response to it was coming, growing up in a very deeply religious home, and in the Bible Belt, and I was just kind of like transported to a kid again on the occult sense. I'm like, it's my cabinet of curiosities, all over. But I'm not going to spoil any quotes, Courtney. But one of my favorite scenes was the "Your magic is unique." Just after the planetarium, sort of the universe scene, and how they kind of address that and everything. I definitely am emboldened myself with that very sentiment, and it's kept me alive for very long. With the sentiment that we can't constantly grow and change all the time, and I think that's important with kind of what we do as witches. But it's I don't know, it just reminded me a lot of that, at my lovely cabinet of curiosity. It was a whole sort of like endearing sort of making your own magic out of trauma and revisiting things, and and I loved the idea of the forbidden box, with the book and everything. And I like to think most days that don't we all as witches always have some sort of forbidden little box off into the corner as well? And that, I think, goes back to the sense of childhood, but also the very real sense, some, as Courtney knows, some of the things that we collect, so I think, the little sprinkles of reality through that, even though it was very fantasy, just really kind of like had me in that endearing moment, which is why I didn't really pay much attention to the occult vomit. So
I'm going to answer a question that came. I can't see the comments; they're blank for my first screen this time. So I saw that. How much it came out in the U.S. It was like 60 something million. And then worldwide, it was is also 60 something million. And I believe it said it was 131 million it's made to date. So it's made a lot of money. It's considered it was very popular when it came out, and is considered successful, even though they believe it could have made more money. And I want to just, with that question answered, I want to go back to this sense of childhood. And so when I watched it for the first time today, I could see that when I was young, I would have loved it. And again, watching it now, there's parts of it that bother me that I think should have been fixed. I didn't love the kid. I didn't think he was a good choice. Acting wise, he didn't match up to the other actors who did a beautiful job. I think the production value was gorgeous. The sets were gorgeous. The house was gorgeous. All of that stuff didn't bother me. Some of it was a little hokey, but I think with all of the things it was throwing out, the horror, the fairy tales, all the pieces, it all worked. The story was fine. I did not like the baby Jack Black. I think it was bizarre. I was like, no, do not do that. That just ruined it. It was but kid movies tend to have a little bit of that hokey stuff. I think going back to what I said earlier is that this recalls movies from the 80s, and it is an Amblin film. So having that production company behind it, that PG Disney backing kind of thing, makes sense. And this kind of feels very much, again, like the young boy coming of age stories where this one is not so much of the coming of age story where the false father has to be killed, that kind of Joseph Campbell story, although it's sort of there a little bit because he has to overcome this evil male figure. So you have it in there, but what you have also is the young boy misbehaving and having to solve the problem himself. And this is sort of like matches Gremlins, which is also another Amblin film. So if you think about in that story, and I think that's what it recalls, or in that story, he's older, gets this magical creature, accidentally turns him into gremlins, and he has to save the town from the gremlins. So you have that sort of, that's the model of this one. So I think I could see myself liking this. It feels very mid-'80s, early 80s, and it was written in the 70s, so and that's the whole decade earlier, but it feels like that. It feels like something that reckons back to a simple story with magic that we could love as kids, and that's what it feels. I know I would have liked it. I would have shown it to my kids if they were young at the time in 2018, although anybody could watch a kid's film. But I generally speaking, I think this was pretty good. Yes, Hocus Pocus is another one that has that feel. Hocus Pocus was more centered to the witchcraft storyline that we expect. This one's more akin to the fantasy magic stuff we saw in the early 80s, and then again in the mid 2000s you see it again. So I thought it was pretty decent. Not my favorite film in the whole world, but definitely I didn't mind it.
Oh, there we go. And the quote. I want to just hop into two things. One is talking about like the nostalgia of childhood. I had a little bit of a different moment where I really I got emotional because I felt represented as a witch in this movie in the way that Lewis made his own spell out of the definitions, and just that's what I do. It's like haphazard. I call myself a bad witch, not because I do bad things, which I do, but because Jason, as we can tell that Jason is not here.
Isn't that chaos magic?
I was about to say that's the onus of all my practice, so we're not too dissimilar in that. So.
But it's just like I'm like a lazy witch. Like I'm not gonna go out and like plan the things. It's like I feel it in the moment, and I'm gonna grab whatever's on my desk. Here's a pen. Here's the microphone I unplugged, and I'm gonna make something out of this, with a napkin. And that's what he did, but that's what gave him that confidence, and he had that coming to power moment because he liked the definitions, so he started screaming out definitions of words, and suddenly he made something happen. And I think that therein is where it wasn't about defeating the evil spirit to make him a warlock, it was finding that confidence, and that's where he got it. So I literally sobbed during that scene watching it now because I hadn't really had that moment yet. And when I saw it the first time, and I have since, since seeing it again, had that moment. And so it was really nice to feel. I feel like this is maybe other than some fun quotes in some of the other movies that we've seen. I feel like this was the first time that I was really represented, and it felt really nice. So it made me enjoy it that much more. Sorry, go ahead.
No, go on. I was going to say, now I'm going to feel really badly when I give mine. I'm going to
You're next.
Okay,
We'll see you next week.
I'll tell you. Okay, I'll tell you since I'm next. I'll rip the Band-Aid off. Eli Roth, I feel, was wrong in the directorial position of this film because Eli was more slasher films than anything, and this book was written by someone who had the illustrations by one of my favorite artists, Edward Gorey. Now, for all his trouble, Tim Burton would have brought in something along the lines of more of a Beetlejuice, or I think that Tim Burton's art would have looked more like the illustrations because he gets that dark, macabre, the sort of spooky that Edward Gorey got. Eli Roth, brilliant in so many things, but he's better in his slasher horror films as opposed to throw up magic movies.
Turn your light off.
I know.
Okay. No, but hold on, Heather, real quick before you go there.
I turned it up.
Oh my god! The second thing that I was about to say was about Eli Roth as the director, because I like him. Go ahead, turn your lights on or off or whatever.
Eli Roth was horrible as the director. The kid was okay. The kid was not nearly as good as the kids from It, Pennywise. He was not nearly as good as the kids from Stranger Things. He was not nearly as good as Harry Potter. He was not really. He was okay. He was okay. But I did like his encyclopedia spell. I think that was clever. The encyclopedia spell was clever.
I'm making an encyclopedia spell right now. So
I am certain you are, but this is a PG-rated show, so you can't say those words on it.
I was about to say though, Courtney, how you feel about Richard-Lael's position on Eli Roth? You could totally whip up one of the water fountain things that Lewis did. The splashy splash, where he got the kid enemy in the hallway.
Oh, right. Yeah, I forgot about that. We'll see.
I think Richard-Lael, I'm going to have to disagree with you. I think Eli Roth actually did a brilliant job in balancing it. So I think he did actually really well. I get what you're saying, though. It would have been a different film if you would have had what's his face do it. I think it would have been I can't brain just
Tim Burton.
Thank you. I think Tim Burton's brilliant, and he would have captured this in a totally different way. The film would have been totally different because his production value, his filming, he's part of the film as the director. A Tim Burton film is a Tim Burton film. And so, yes, he would have had the Edward Gorey stuff much closer. But if we can separate that out and say, okay, that would have been a different film. This film, I thought for a slasher horror picture guy, I thought he actually balanced that really, really well. It wasn't scary at all. Would a 5-year-old be scary? Probably a few of the things, but I don't know. That's my opinion. I didn't find a problem. Yeah,
I'm much older than 5, and that continuous poop joke
that I didn't like.
Scare me to death.
No, I didn't like the poop joke either.
I feel like but I feel like if Tim Burton, like just as an example, because that's the example you gave, if Tim Burton had made this film, it would have been a film that we had already seen. It would have been something. It wouldn't have been what it was, and what it was, whether you liked it or you didn't, was something. It was something magical, and it was something, I think, different, because I look at this. My son was 8 when this came out. This was like his first stepping stone into horror movies. Now he's a horror aficionado. So no, it wasn't scary to us, but it was a little scary to him, and it was enough to like wet his whistle to get him into that genre. So I think it is a nice balance. I think it's nice that Eli Roth did something different. I love Eli Roth movies. So I think I think going into it, I was not as unbiased as Richard-Lael with his synopsis. I was biased because it was an Eli Roth movie, and so I was excited about it no matter what. But I do feel like if it was Tim Burton, it would have been the same Tim Burton movie. Like, it wouldn't have been as special.
I think I would love to see Tim Burton do it at some point. I said,
sure,
whether it's a claymation or whatever, I think his version, because I think it would be so different.
Yeah.
And I think there's space for that too. I think there could be another movie with him doing it, because it would be balanced differently. And it hopefully would have a different main character, because I agree 100% that actor, and he tried, but that and the poop jokes were my least favorite, and the baby I want to say baby Jesus. No, that's a different movie.
I cannot.
I'm with you on the baby Jesus.
Like, literally, that's one of my only things.
When it started peeing, though, I lost my mind.
No,
I already have a thing about adult babies that I just can't. That and mannequins. I collect dolls everywhere, right? Heather, you would love my space. But I and most of them in Spirited, but I just cannot do when adults are portrayed as babies. It just makes my skin crawl. When it comes to that. I can't even. I'm gonna walk into the harbor. But
it reminded me a little of from The Mask with Jim Carrey. That I didn't like it.
I didn't like that part either.
I
That
did
part where
not-
she
Yeah.
changes.
I was
No,
gonna say,
Yeah, but see,
bar that.
okay, but that was so I am so sick of watching like stupid, cheesy, like terrible CGI, and yet it was CGI, obviously, but it was like unnerving in a way that like I feel like only a horror director could have made it unnerving. It was gross to look at, and I liked that aspect of it. I don't want to see it in my dreams, but I think that it was like that. If they were gonna do that, it could have been a lot worse. And so it was like nicely unnerving. I feel like that
I was
part.
gonna
Didn't they do that in Harry Potter? Isn't that there's another movie where
The
they
Polyjuice
spin and do all
potion.
that? There you go, Polyjuice potion. See,
Yeah,
I'm
I would
more
have said
throwing more
anything.
out.
I would have said something about the production had the CGI quality been different, but you know, I that's where I'm kind of like I more so happy now. But again, Heather, like I was saying with the occult vomit, I'm hanging on to everything I can with this movie, because like I saw, you know, when Serena was portraying his mother and coming into, I was just like, oh man, if somebody was adept enough at astral projection and shape-shifting, I was just like, I was holding on to anything at that point just to you know, within my childhood, because what I liked about this film is it is that classic mysterious house that comes alive, and it brought me back to, again, the going out to the Reddits and the hive minds to find all the other films that I in the like late 90s and early 2000s, 80s and up, that I remember like growing up with. And there was a film that I can't remember, it was on either Disney or Nick or one of the two, that it was lost to memory for like 10 years for me, and you got like, people can probably relate with this, where you're like, I need to find this pop culture thing, you know. It was called the Three Investigators in the Secret of Terror Castle, which is kind of interesting. And it was like 2003. It was like it was a little bit more paranormal, but it was about a steam powered house, and that magic kind of coming through that. And then it reminded me of Disney's Now You See It, which is more of a like close-up magicians realizing they have like real magic in that kind of way, and they're in this big castle, like doing this competition. So it kind of like picked at other films, and I guess that's where the occult vomit kind of hit for me. It was providing reference to a lot of the other inner child kind of things for me, so I didn't take it as a complete negative. So
you know what, I will tell you, Matthew, you're right. It does hit a lot of other occult films and movies. And this one, actually, I remember seeing this film the first time I actually ever really saw this film was way back in 1999 when Mathew Lillard was in 13 Ghosts. And
excellent movie. That was a great movie.
No, I love 13 Ghosts.
I was waiting for it.
I'm on the defensive.
You are.
At least 13 Ghosts. At least it was like, you know, there was reason, but
I was about to say somewhere akin to your 3 Men a Night joke.
Right? That is
yes.
That's so true. That's it. Otherwise, I would just say it was just a little old hole in the wall, but that means something.
Okay. All right.
Wow.
Gigi, any
Wrap
final
it up.
thoughts?
Oh my gosh. No, overall it was an okay movie, a good one, like I said, for a Sunday rainy day type thing, at home with the kids type of thing. Watch it through once. It's one of those ones. Don't want to say one and done, because this was the second time that I've seen it. I did enjoy it. It was okay. Didn't hate it. Didn't love it.
You didn't mind it.
Didn't mind it. We have to get you a shirt.
Yeah. Didn't mind it.
All right. Would you guys mind if I took some time for my 2 pages of quotes, because
Do
there's
your
a lot
2
of them.
pages of quotes.
Please.
Okay.
I
So
know we have a Malleus Maleficarum around here somewhere.
oddly enough, not one of my quotes. I was very busy typing while I was watching
It's
it.
for summoning up the quotes, is what it is.
There you go. I got one.
Oh, there we go. Hit Richard-Lael over the head with it. I'm just kidding, Richard-Lael. I love you very much.
Oh no,
all right.
you can don't tempt me with a good time. I mean, I haven't been smacked so good in years.
All right. Anyway, so in the beginning, Jonathan says when they walk in the house, I'm sorry, Lewis says that's a lot of clocks, and Jonathan says, well, what constitutes constitutes a lot is really a matter of personal taste. For me, this is the perfect amount of clocks. And I felt seen by that quote too, because how many Nada dolls do I need to have?
All of them.
Every exchange between Jonathan and Florence in the beginning of the movie, which was an insult, I was cry laughing. Jonathan says, "This old hag is my next door neighbor, Mrs. Florence Zimmerman." And Florence says, "I'm relieved to see you didn't inherit your uncle's freakishly oversized head." And he says, "Huh," says the woman who literally looks like a Q-tip. And she says, "Oh, look, the giant head is angry." And then he said, "My God, did that withered purple skeleton just speak?" And I was crying. The way that Jack Black says tissue, he said it like multiple times. I was like, please say it again. Tissue? Do you need a tissue? Again, an exchange between Jonathan and Florence. She says, "Hey, gorilla groin." And he says, "Hold your horses, you scarecrow." And then when he's talking about he's going to drown his sorrows in hot chocolate, and he says, "Florence," like asking if she'd like some, and she says, "Delighted." And he says, "Get your own." And she said, "Choke and die." And I was very excited by that. Florence says, this one is a good one because this is not a funny one. This one speaks to my heart a little bit because there was some of those in there too. Florence says, "I found that all one really needs in this world is one good friend." And isn't that true? Jonathan and Lewis are talking. When Lewis is running out of the house after the house is like doing all kinds of stuff. And Jonathan says, "I'm sorry you had to see that." And Lewis is freaking out and he goes, No, houses don't attack you. And if they do attack, you're definitely not supposed to say sorry you had to see that. And then he goes, and this was the quote that I think I texted you, Gigi, because this holds a special place in our hearts. He goes, "Is this place haunted? Are you going to axe murder me? You're going to axe murder me, aren't you?" Jonathan says, what smells of rancid sulfur? And then the cat, the
Bad kitty.
That's the first time that joke happened.
Yeah, but the cat, I'm sorry, farts are funny. I'm the mom of a teenage boy. I'm a teacher. I have little kids. Farts are funny. And the cat farted out leaves, and it was hilarious. But bad kitty, yes.
Bad kitty.
Jonathan says, "We don't know where the clock is or what it does except something horrible. No, we got to do the responsible thing. Lie to the kid." So that was funny. And then me as a mom, when Jonathan pulled up to the school in his car and he's beeping the horn and he's like, Lewis, can't you see me? I'm over here. And he's like, Lewis is like, "Oh my God, it's your Uncle Johnny." And that's me embarrassing my son because I recently learned all the teenage slang that I'm not supposed to say, and I say it all the time. And it's just
me too.
Oh yeah,
I'm all the time whenever
literally
I can.
Ground me.
I text it to him, and he's like, "I will stop talking to you."
Good on you.
And then we touched on this one a little bit, but I think the whole quote is worth saying. When it's Jonathan, Florence, and Lewis, and it's I think right before, right during, or after that universe scene, and they say, "You're the only you in the whole universe. That makes your whole style of magic just crazy unique. 1 in 100 million kajillion. So I can give you the right books, teach you the right spells, but that last 1%, that's up to you." And I think that's
great.
A great way to look at it. And then Richard-Lael, get ready with your light switch. Lewis says, "So how do I find my magic style or whatever it is?" And Jonathan says, "It's in there somewhere. You just have to quiet down and listen." And so he makes a face and he says, "Well, now it looks like you're pooping." When he's playing the saxophone and Florence says, "Be a dear, fetch a knife and stab me in the ears." And then this quote I wrote down a couple different times when they said it because it made my heart feel very full. When they're talking about, he says, "I was the black swan of the family." And then he tries to correct him. And then after they have their little exchange, he said, "I think I might be a black swan too." And Jack Black says, "Well, then we're just a flock of swans." But then he corrects him
And
again.
that's what I texted you.
Yeah, a bevy. Which comes up again a couple times. Later on, I'm skipping ahead a little bit, but later on when Jonathan is telling him he shouldn't be in the house. It's not safe. And I wish you had never come. Like, my heart is breaking. And then Lewis cries, but we're a bevy of swans. And I lost my mind and I cried a lot. But then at the end, when they're all together and he asks Florence, do you want to be black swans with us? And she says, well, can I be a purple swan? And he was like, deal. Which is great because everybody, you can be a family, but you can be unique in your family, in your chosen family. 3 gongs. Last time it was 4. It's 3. What happens when it gets down to 1? Well, we'll hide in the basement like sensible people. And I don't know any sensible people that'll go in a basement. I'm quite unsensible and go into basements a lot. You're not sensible either. More insults. Well, at least I lived to see the purple pachyderm get stumped. And she says, I don't know how much longer any of us will be living, weird beard. And he says, cranky old crone. And she says, mush brush. And he says, hag face. And she goes, oh, go braid your back hair. Isaac says, I like the boy. An orphan with a love for Captain Midnight warms my dead heart. And then the last 2, not funny, but that coming to power moment, which I have to quote because I love it. Isaac says, of all people, Florence, I thought you'd want this. I know what losing your family did to you. You're too sad and broken to work any real magic. And she like gears up and she says, maybe I was, but now I'm indomitable. And then boom. And I actually wrote next to it, yes, queen, like get him. So that was fun. And then Lewis had that moment too, where he goes, I'm going to show you what a little weird can do. Mm-hmm. So those folks are my quotes. Everyone's free to say things now without fear of getting hexed.
I want to jump in, if it's okay, about your love and attention to the him using his own spell, and you said that really spoke to you. I think that's really important. I just want to bring that up because that is actually the whole premise behind most folk magics. Most people who perform magic over the centuries didn't have books like we have now, didn't have prescribed rituals. There was ceremonial magicians and occult stuff going on that did, but most people in the world didn't have the money to get all the things. They didn't have the education to know all the things. They didn't have all those studies that we associate. What they did was they grabbed a pencil, they grabbed some water, they spit, they used what they had, they did whatever, and they made a spell. And they said, what was it? That's just correspondences, known sympathetic magic of that's what magic is at its core. So I don't think, when you said you felt seen by that, I'm just going to say is like most of the world practices the magic that you practice. Most of the world, has for centuries. So that's the whole premise. So you should be seen. You're doing it the way.
It was a moment for me because it took me so long to call myself a witch because I didn't understand that. And I thought I had to do the right thing the right way with the book, with the right tools, with the whatever. And I hadn't earned the title of witch because I didn't do things that way. And I had that coming to power moment when I realized that didn't matter. And it was my craft and it was me, what I did. So that mimicked my coming to power moment where it was like, oh, okay, yeah, nobody gets to name me a witch. I name me a witch.
Right. Yeah. And that's an important thing.
As somebody who prides themselves on both the detail and evidential practice and evidential mediumship especially, but as a chaos magician, I was really endeared by his use of the 8-ball because that is not out of the question for me these days. When talk about folk magic, and speaking of, especially with jokes, I'm about to write I swear it's on the list, a magical joke book about sympathetic magic. Sim pun, if you will, and very much in that similar kind of aspect. And Richard-Lael, speaking of quotes that Courtney didn't touch, I thought about you and your similar sense of humor, and it reminded me when we went around Salem together, when they were talking about the cookies, and Florence was like, "Weird is like the nuts in my cookies. It's the nuts that makes things interesting." And it was fun, really, to watch Cate Blanchett try not to lose it on camera for a hot second. And especially it endeared my proud little gay occultist heart as well, so for a hot second. So,
all right. So having said all that, we have one thing left to do. And I do want to apologize because I had the comments with me for a while. Mine have been a blank screen for a while too, but if we put them up on screen, we can take a tally. It is time for wands up or wands down on the house with a clock in its walls. Oh boy. Oh, all right.
I'm
so
turning
wands
my
up from
clock back.
Oh God, we lost Matthew.
very up very high for Matt. Up for Gigi, up for me. What's that? Like a 1 o'clock? 3 o'clock?
I'm a mid-range. It was
All right.
good. It was fairly
A
good.
mustache level for Richard-Lael. We've got Tabitha's got wands up.
But
I
I'll
can't
tell you
see
this.
the comments, so I can't see what are.
I'm going by what's on the screen. Up, wands up for Jack Black.
I'm going to say wands up for the aesthetic, for the house. Wands down for the kid.
Insult book up.
Right.
I'll give it an insult book up.
Jack Black and Cate Blanchett are getting my clock up.
Okay, I'm just leaving this right here at this point.
All right. Well, thank you for everyone in the comments. Even though we're having technical difficulties and can't see all of them, we love that you're here. We know that you're here. We appreciate you chiming in with us. Why don't we real quick go around now that we've done our wands up and find out where everyone is going to be in the upcoming week. So Heather, do you have anything coming up?
I don't have anything coming up I'm going to be taking a little trip up to the Virginia to visit my family, but I won't be doing anything until live and in person until Mystic South. And that's in Atlanta in July. So come on out, 3 or 4 days. You can buy tickets and come join us for a mystical adventure, magic, and all good things. I do want to show off my new shirt that just came in the mail. Courtney's always showing off the swag, but I have to show off my swag.
Yes.
Look at that.
Mystery
Scared and alone, Courtney. I'm wearing it.
Yes.
I feel like this is a moment for me. Heather Greene is wearing a scared and alone shirt. Like, I'm not okay.
If my haunted doll workshop gets selected for Mystic South, then I will be wearing that when I do my workshop with all the dolls. But I also want to say that we have the Witches of Hollywood documentary that I was in and with other many good voices is now very easy to find. So look it up. I don't know where it's airing because this just came about and people are talking about it. It's called The Witches of Hollywood. It is, I think we have an image for it. If we don't, it's no big deal. Just look it up. It's a documentary. It was made several years ago called The Witches of Hollywood. And yeah, you can see that it's more of what we're doing, a little more academic, and it's a documentary. So
that's so fun. All right. I just, before we get to anyone else real quick, there was a question in the chat and I was disregarding my hostly duties. Next week's movie is Time Bandits. So thank you for asking that. Richard-Lael, what do you have coming up?
In a world where Jason Mankey is not present at Movie Coven, in a film that Tim Burton would have done better, I teach University Magicus, where you can find me on Saturdays. I read tarot. You can find me where I do seances in tarot, either in my home here in New Orleans or online at thegentlemanpsychic.com. I am a little bit of everywhere. I might be in your nightmares. I might be in your dreams. I don't know. That's some of my artwork. And I'm a little bit of everywhere. I'm like Satan Claus. That's it.
Satan Claus.
Yes. Yes.
All right. Matthew, what do you have coming up?
So I, as usual, am at Pentagram Salem 4 days a week, available for mediumship and charm castings and Lenormand, all the old school stuff, which we do by phone as well. That's at pentagramsalem.com. And you can also find me at themystery.me, and that's mystery with MISTERY. There's a little bit of that sympathetic magic again for you guys. And then I've got my finally got my hardcover of my first occult poetry, and When I Turn Conceptually Human, finally in. I'm so proud, which spells witch. And then I'm halfway through my second one as well, and I'm going to be posting page updates as well on that. It's a lot about trauma and fun ghosts, aka the not so fun ghosts. And kind of a blend of all the human stuff, the ghostly stuff, a little bit of charms, chants, and my illustrations are all going to be post-it notes, line drawings on post-it notes Xeroxed into the page, which is kind of cool. So it's a very kind of like a fun project that I'm going to have. And that I'm going to post updates about when I get that done. So, and my YouTube as well, I just, kind of kick around doing random stuff as well. You could find it all at The Mystery. So
Perfect. Thank you. And Gigi, what do you have?
I have Waverly Hills coming up on Easter, so that's exciting.
I'm so jealous.
So number 1 and number 2 on my list is done. And then the following weekend, actually I'm going with Todd Bonner and Jeff and my friend Heather and Lori to an old convent, Sisters of Holy Cross Schoolhouse in Niles, Michigan. So we're going to stay the weekend there. Do some shenanigans because that's what we do.
Is that going to be live?
Where can you find me? I'm going to try to do some lives. I don't want to miss out on the experiences I'm supposed to have. So Paranormal XL podcast on Facebook, Instagram, all that fun stuff.
Perfect. So, yeah. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you to everyone in our comments. Thank you to our fill-in coven members. We've gone a minute over, so we have one last thing to do before we cut this shindig. I just want to say, Patty, take your ruby slippers back. It was great being a host, but I'd rather be on the panel. And with that, we cackle. 1, 2, 3.